Today, we're diving into a technology that's taking learning way beyond the textbook and into, well, a whole new reality. We're talking about virtual simulations.
So just imagine a flight simulator, but for literally anything. Seriously, think about it. Performing surgery, handling a major business crisis, or even practicing tough conversations. That's the real promise here. A playground for your brain where you can practice, fail, and eventually master skills, all in a completely safe space.
Okay, so before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's nail down what we're actually talking about. To really get why these simulations are so powerful, we need to understand a few of the core ideas behind them.
At its heart, this is all about building digital worlds. You know, it's like the difference between just staring at a map and actually getting to explore the city yourself. With tech like virtual and augmented reality, we can build these places where learners aren't just watching from the sidelines, they're right in the middle of the action.
Now, these virtual simulations don't just exist in a bubble. They're actually a huge part of a much bigger movement called technology-enhanced learning. This is basically the whole shift toward weaving digital tools into education to make it smarter, more personal, and a whole lot more effective.
And here's the crucial point. This isn't just about cool new gadgets, it's about a complete flip in the philosophy of teaching. We're moving away from the old-school teacher at the front of the room model. Instead, technology helps the teacher become more of a guide, creating these experiences that put you, the learner, right in the driver's seat.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? The key words here are transformative and experiential. We're talking about building entire worlds where we can learn by doing, which is, by the way, one of the best ways our brains actually hold on to information, all in a setting where it's totally okay to mess up.
So we've defined the what, but now let's get into the why. Why is this huge shift from passively listening to actively doing so important? What does it really unlock for someone who's trying to learn?
Here's the difference in a nutshell. The traditional way is often about passive knowledge transfer. You sit, you listen, you try to memorize. But the simulation method, that's all about experiential learning. It's where you build your own understanding by getting your hands dirty and figuring things out for yourself.
And when you make that switch, the benefits are huge. This isn't just about remembering facts for a test. It's about building real hands-on skills. Engagement just skyrockets because you're part of the lesson, not just watching it. And maybe most importantly, it lets an instructor see how you think on your feet and make decisions under pressure, stuff a multiple-choice test could never, ever measure.
Okay, so this all sounds amazing in theory, but how do you actually make it work in a real classroom? Because yeah, it's a little more complicated than just handing everybody a VR headset and saying, go for it. This is the secret sauce. The real magic isn't just playing the simulation, it's in the cycle that happens around it. First, the student jumps in and engages with the problem. Then, and this part is absolutely critical, the instructor leads a discussion about what happened, why, and what could have gone differently. And finally, the learner gets to reflect on their own choices. That's what turns a fun experience into a powerful lesson that actually sticks.
But let's be real for a second. Making this kind of big change is never easy. For every incredible possibility this tech opens up, there are some pretty big real-world hurdles to get over.
And the biggest roadblock is often technical. Not every student has a high-powered computer or a super-fast internet connection. So figuring out how to bridge that digital divide is probably the #1 challenge to making this technology work for everyone.
But here's where another game-changing technology can come in and help: artificial intelligence. Think of AI as this dynamic tutor that lives inside the simulation. It can tweak the difficulty on the fly to match the student's skill level and give them instant, personalized feedback to help them get better, right then and there.
So when you zoom out and look at the big picture, what's the end game here? It's about so much more than just teaching school subjects. It's about building the kind of skills that actually prepare people for the messy, complex challenges of the real world.
And really, it all starts with empowering our teachers. The goal is to give them these incredible tools so they can finally move beyond that one-size-fits-all model. They can personalize the learning journey for every single student, meeting them exactly where they are and helping them grow.
And this isn't just some abstract, feel-good idea. You can actually track how these concrete skills are developing. For instance, using a framework like EntreComp, you could see a student in a simulation learn to combine different ideas to invent something new. Or with GreenComp, they might have to learn how to balance sustainable choices with real-world budgets. These are the tangible skills people need for the future.
So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Maybe it's public speaking, or financial planning, or having a really difficult conversation.
What's one skill you wish you could have practiced over and over in a safe, virtual world before you had to do it for real? It really makes you think, doesn't it? The possibilities are just endless.
So, today we're going to dive into something pretty cool, a technology that is completely changing how we practice and get really good at complicated skills. We're talking about virtual simulations. Let's jump right in. Think about this for a second. It's a problem we've all faced, right? You've read the entire textbook, you sat through the lectures, maybe you even aced the exam. But how do you actually practice something tricky, like a high-stakes negotiation or a delicate medical procedure, before you're thrown into the deep end for real? And this right here, this is what educators call the knowing-doing gap. It's a fantastic term. On one side, you've got knowing, all the facts and theories you memorize. But on the other side, you've got doing, actually making a decision, handling a tough conversation, or solving a problem on the fly. And as you can see, there's often a huge gap between the two. So what's the solution? How do we build a bridge over that gap? Well, that's exactly where virtual simulations come into the picture. They offer a really powerful new way to connect what we know with what we can do. Okay, so let's get a key term down. When we talk about virtual and immersive learning, it's not just about cool VR headsets, It's a whole educational philosophy that uses tech to build these super realistic, interactive worlds where you aren't just reading, you're actually engaging with the material. And this all fits into a much bigger trend, something called technology-enhanced learning. The goal here is pretty revolutionary when you think about it. It's about using digital tools not just as a gimmick, but to fundamentally transform the entire process of how we teach and, more importantly, how we learn. There's this quote from a European Commission syllabus that just nails it. It talks about creating a safe and controlled setting where you can apply what you've learned and build real skills. That's the secret sauce right there, getting the experience without the real-world risk. And look, this is way more than just a new tool. This is about a completely new way of thinking about education. It's a major shift in pedagogy, which is just a fancy word for the methods and practices of teaching. So, what's the big idea here? It really boils down to this one simple principle. We're moving away from a model where you just passively listen and moving towards a world where learning is all about doing. This slide lays out the difference perfectly. On the left, you've got the old way. It's all about the teacher and knowledge just flows in one direction. But on the right, simulation-based learning flips the script entirely. It's learner-centered, it's experiential. That means you're the one at the center of the action, building your own understanding as you go. Okay, so that's the theory. But what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's talk about some of the powerful tools that are out there training people right now. Yeah, this isn't some far-off futuristic idea. This is happening today. Companies, universities, you name it, they're already using these kinds of tools to build some really critical skills. Take a platform like Wanda, for instance. It's specifically designed to help people practice those crucial soft skills. The things that are almost impossible to teach from a textbook, like negotiation, resolving a conflict, or just communicating clearly under pressure. And here's the really amazing part. The technology itself has become so much more accessible. You don't need to be a coder to create these experiences. You can customize scenarios and then push them out to almost any device, a phone, a tablet, a web browser, or even a full VR setup. It's incredibly flexible. All right, but this brings up a huge question, maybe the most important one. If you're not just giving a simple multiple-choice test, how in the world do you measure how well someone is doing in one of these complex, dynamic situations? I mean, really think about that. How do you grade a conversation or a tough decision someone has to make in a split second? Your standard ABCD test just isn't going to cut it. It calls for a whole new way of thinking about assessment. Well, the answer is actually a pretty smart three-part process. First, instructors can actually watch people's decision-making skills in real time. Second, you can use AI to give instant, personalized feedback and even adjust the difficulty. And finally, and this is key, you combine the simulation with a guided discussion so people can reflect on what they learned. It's a complete learning loop. And what's great is that this whole approach lines up perfectly with what experts say are the critical skills for the 21st century. Think of frameworks like the EU's EntreComp for entrepreneurship or GreenComp for sustainability. A simulation can test your ability to mash up different ideas into something new, or see how well you can balance going green with, staying on budget. These are the real-world skills people need. So when you put all this together, what are we really looking at for the future of learning? We're looking at a completely new path, a path that takes us from just knowing the theory to actually achieving mastery. Ultimately, it all comes back to this one simple but incredibly powerful idea. Virtual simulations are that missing bridge. They are what finally closes that nagging gap between knowing what you're supposed to do and actually being able to do it. So I'll leave you with this to think about. If you could jump into a simulation for any experience to learn a new skill with zero risk, what would you pick? Would it be public speaking, performing a complex surgery, maybe even landing a plane? The possibilities are pretty mind-blowing. Thanks so much for tuning in.